Before we get started today, I'd like everybody watching this video to extend your best wishes, thoughts, and prayers to longtime voice of the 500, not only on radio, but also on television as well, Mr. Bob Jenkins, who announced today that he is battling brain cancer. Bob was not only one of the voices of my childhood, but truly my racing life up until this point, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who that applies to. Millions of people heard his voice, and believe me, Bob, we are all pulling for you. You can beat this. Boy, there have been a lot of things that have happened in terms of Indy 500 entries since I last updated you at the end of last year. So let's talk about it. So, in an absolutely perfect world, we could still be looking at an entry as large as 38 cars. The breakdown of that would be, ironically enough, 19 Honda and 19 Chevy entries. Now, do I think that that's going to all pan out? No, and we'll explain why in this video. We do, however, have 28 absolutely confirmed car and driver combinations for this year's Indianapolis 500. Those are set in stone. Those are going to be on the entry list. We also have 3 other cars that are going to be on the entry list. They're already confirmed, already locked in, at least to the entry list, not the field, of course. But they do not have confirmed drivers yet. So there are essentially 31 cars entered in the Indy 500 at this point in the year. But there are still a possible 7 that are in various states of either confirmation or perhaps unconfirmation, so to speak. And we'll talk about which of those entries are most likely or perhaps least likely to be entered in this year's Indianapolis 500. And to help you do that, I will add some color coding when we're talking about who the potential drivers could be. Now, if a name appears in gold, that means a driver is all but confirmed in that seat. It just hasn't officially come out yet. If you see blue coloring a name, that means it's either speculation on my part or a rumor, but something that's not necessarily been 100% confirmed. Also, I have to say this for someone who may not know, TBA stands for to be announced. So you may see TBA in place of a number, or you may see TBA in place of a driver. That's what it means, to be announced. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean things are going to be announced, of course, and I do believe that there will be bumping this year, but I think a safe number, if I were a betting man right now on how many cars I think will be entered by the time we get to May of 2021, fingers crossed, is 35. I think that's a nice conservative number. I think you could really see as many as 36, 37, but considering the economic strains that we're under right now, I think I would be ecstatic to have 35 cars, to have a true bump day, and to have a truly competitive field of 33. And I think that's where we're headed, and that is great news. So let's talk about where we are. How are we going to get to that potential 38 or at least 35? As you can see, Team Penske's on the screen right now. You guys know the 4 cars for Team Penske: Joseph Newgarden, Will Power, Simon Pagenaud, Scott McLaughlin. Of course, McLaughlin is the rookie on that team, but certainly not a rookie to success in racing. And if you have only watched my videos talking about the entry list to the Indy 500, you may say, well, David, you claimed there was going to be a 5th Penske car coming into the Indy 500. Where is it? Well, it's right here. You first heard about it, of course, on my channel, but we finally got the details of exactly what the 5th Penske entry was going to be. And it's going to be entered under the banner of Peretta Autosport. It's going to be a female-owned and female-driven team. Of course, Simona Di Silvestro will be the driver of the number 16 Chevrolet, and there's a lot of things to break down about this particular entry. Again, this is a car that is prepared by Team Penske, so you might as well consider it the 5th Penske entry. It should also be under consideration that this entry is taking the spot of the Juncos Racing team. I do not believe that Juncos Racing will enter this year's Indianapolis 500 for the simple fact that Penske leased not only the chassis that bumped Fernando Alonso 2 years ago in the Indianapolis 500, but also all of Juncos Racing's equipment. Now again, I need to stress this. It's a lease. They have not purchased that equipment. Therefore, Juncos Racing in the future could come back to IndyCar, assuming that Pareto Autosport doesn't eventually buy out all of that equipment and go out on their own. But as far as this entry should be concerned, it's a 5th Penske entry, and it's taking the spot of Juncos. Chip Ganassi Racing, another team that's totally locked in. 4 cars. Scott Dixon, Alex Palou entering the team, coming over from Dale Coyne last year. Easy for me to say. Marcus Ericsson, 3rd year in IndyCar, 2nd year for Chip Ganassi, and Tony Kanaan returning to the team, driving the number 48 car that will be driven in the road and street circuits by Jimmy Johnson. Now, I should say that there is an outside possibility that at least not this year, but possibly next year or maybe even beyond, that Jimmy Johnson could be in the Indianapolis 500. He continues to make noise that he's thinking about it. So we'll just kind of have to see where the road takes us in terms of that, but just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Not this year, maybe next year, maybe the year after that. Andretti Autosport. This is where we get to kind of sink our teeth into some things, because there was quite a bit unconfirmed the last time we spoke. Things that are confirmed: Alexander Rossi obviously back at the team. Ryan Hunter-Reay was confirmed in between the last video and this one. Colton Herta, no surprise there. James Hinchcliffe is now confirmed at the number 25 with Genesis backing. And Marco Andretti is now a part-time driver in IndyCar, but will obviously still be in the Indianapolis 500. Now, the question, of course, is who is the 6th Andretti Autosport car? Traditionally, they enter this car. There is talk that there will be an entry from Andretti Autosport. It's just kind of a question of who has the most money, of course. And I believe it is Ryan Norman. I actually predicted him as the driver of this car way back in the very first video I made about this in the fall of last year. And it seems to me that this is where the momentum is. I know some people will mention Oliver Askew, who tested the car at Sebring, or a Stephen Wilson, who I've mentioned I know for a fact is potentially in that running for that 6th car. But I have been inundated with ads for something called Evo Investment on Facebook, and as it turns out, this is something that's owned by Ryan Norman's dad. So I have a feeling if they're spending this much money to try to put investors together, and I would assume the investors would be trying to fund a Ryan Norman IndyCar ride, and potentially you could see Evo Investment on the side of an IndyCar at the Indianapolis 500, and I think if that did happen, I believe it would be Ryan Norman in the seat. So right now, Ryan Norman is my number 1 kind of spot for that 6th Andretti Autosport car. Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, the defending winners of the Indianapolis 500. Right now, I think it's reasonable to expect that they would have 3 cars. They traditionally do, and there's nothing to say that they won't be. Graham Rahal, Takuma Sato, defending champion of the race, 2-time winner, both, of course, in Honda cars. He won the first with Andretti Autosport, second with Rahal Letterman Lanigan. And the 3rd car, I have a feeling, again, not a whole lot of information out there right now as to who could be in this seat, but I would be very surprised if it's anybody but Spencer Pigot. I think that combination, that 3-driver punch with Rahal, Sato, and Pigot, clearly worked out well for Rahal last year. And I think if they brought Pigot back into the team, he's clearly shown that he can cut the mustard, especially at Indianapolis. He's very good there. I think that Spencer Pigot will be the 3rd Rahal Letterman Lanigan entry. Meyer Shank Racing. Now, there are 3 cars listed here, but I would say the 3rd one is extremely unlikely. And the only reason it's still listed here is because I heard probably 2 or 3 months back that there was a potential that Jackie Heinrecher could be putting together another female-owned team, and it would come out of the Meyer Shank stable. I have not heard anything positive or negative to confirm or deny that that is still happening. So as of right now, I have that on the list, but I would describe a third Meyer-Shank entry as very unlikely at this point, especially now that there is another completely unrelated to Jackie Heinrecher, female-owned, female-driven car. I think it's just unlikely that it would happen. Jack Harvey and Helio Castroneves are the two main drivers on this team. And as I've said in the past, I think if the Jackie Heinrecher element did actually come together, it would be Catherine Legg who would drive the car. But again, I think the Paretta Autosport, especially the fact that they're backed by Team Penske, I would be surprised if there was another female-owned, female-driven car in the race. I think at the very least it would split sponsorship between those two entries, and considering, again, kind of Penske's already backed the horse in the race, so to speak, on that perspective. So I don't know. It's a possibility simply because that's a rumor floating around out there, but again, I think it's unlikely. Arrow McLaren SP locked this team in at 3 cars. We've known about this for a while. Pato Award, Felix Rosenquist, and 2-time winner Juan Pablo Montoya. Not much else to say here outside of the fact that there hasn't been 100% confirmation, at least that I've seen, for a number from Montoya, but you have to assume it's the traditional number 66. Dale Coyne Racing. Okay, so all 3 cars are going to be arriving at the Indianapolis 500. So this is going to be a 3-car team. Ed Jones was confirmed at the number 18 Vassar Sullivan element of that team, and then Rick Ware Racing will be helping foot the bill for the other 2 cars in Rick Ware Racing. And that, of course, means that at least one driver you can probably take a wild guess at who it will be. That would be Cody Ware in car number 51. And I've heard that James Davison is not going to be driving Indy cars this year. And I've got that on a pretty reliable source. So my understanding is that a Santino Ferrucci would be the front runner for the 3rd Dale Coyne Racing car. And quite honestly, it would make a lot of sense. Santino Ferrucci was very close to winning last year's race driving for Dale Coyne Racing, and I definitely question why you would split that combination up if you could possibly avoid it, because that could be a race-winning combination. They also have some dealings with the Birds in the past. Santino Ferrucci does, so I think this could be the Bird Rick Ware Racing backed entry, and Santino Ferrucci would be the driver as long as James Davison is not associated with this team this year. AJ Foyt Racing, totally locked in. 3 cars, take it to the bank. Dalton Kellett in car number 4, Sebastian Bourdais in car number 14, and recently confirmed Charlie Kimball. The only difference this year is that he will be car number 11 rather than car number 4, because Dalton Kellett took that one. Tresibia sponsorship, same deal as last year, same 3 cars. Carlin Racing. Okay, so for sure going to have 1 car coming from this team, the number 59. I think there's always still a second car at Carlin Racing in play. I would say that the second Carlin car would be unlikely at this point. It would be another one of those entries where I would be very iffy on whether or not it will happen. In fact, I'm so iffy on it, I'm going to confirm that Max Chilton almost certainly will be the driver, at least for Carlin Racing in the first car, and I don't even know who I could even speculate would be a second Carlin Racing entry. I mean, I guess he could maybe say a Stephen Wilson if he could put together the funding. But just really no momentum behind that. I would just say it's a possibility, but it's not a very high possibility for 2 cars for Carlin Racing. Ed Carpenter Racing, lock this one in at 3 cars. We know who the drivers are. Ed Carpenter in car number 20, Rinus VK in car number 21. We still don't know the number quite yet on the 3rd car, but it would be Connor Daly, of course, and he has been confirmed to have the same deal as last year. Road and Street Circuits in the 20, and the 3rd car for the Indianapolis 500. Okay, getting down to brass tacks. Dreyer and Reinbold Racing. Currently have them at 2 cars, though there's some talk, particularly on trackside with Kurt Cavan and Kevin Lee, that they may only be a 1-car entry for next year, or for this year, I should say, at the Indianapolis 500. And they've also said on trackside that J.R. Hildebrand apparently is the closer of the 2 to a ride. So I would say Hildebrand's going to get the gold lettering and Karam's going to get the blue lettering. Now, I would certainly hope that this team comes with 2 cars. I think they usually do quite a good job for the limited schedule that they run. And I could also see maybe if one of these drivers doesn't end up in a Ryan Reinbold entry, maybe they could go over to a Carlin Racing and run that second car. I don't know. But right now, we're going to put them at 2 cautiously and hope for the best. If not, I think you're at least going to see one for sure from Ryan Reinbold. And finally, wow, believe it or not, Top Gun Racing, there's actually some stuff happening with this. I keep wanting to take this off the list, and they keep coming out with information that makes me keep them on the list, particularly that they have a car number 75, and a driver confirmation that they are willing to go forward right now with RC Anderson. And we actually had a rendering, at least part of a rendering, posted on Facebook by team owner Gary Trout, and it certainly appears that it is at least a livery for a Blue Angels U.S. Navy plane. Now, whether or not that this sponsorship has been sold, that remains to be seen. But they did go to the same company that rendered out the Air Force sponsorship for Connor Daly. So if this team does have Navy backing, I think Top Gun Racing could be on the Indy 500 entry list and actually roll a car out for next year. Now, that being said, I did speak to one industry insider, and I asked the question, how likely do you think Top Gun Racing would be to get on the grid this year versus their failed attempt last year? And he said, well, history has a way of repeating itself. So we'll have to see, but there's some smoke. There's some serious smoke to a potential Top Gun Racing entry. So that is the Indianapolis 500 entry list as things stand in February. How many cars do you think we're going to have? Who do you think will fill the open seats in the field as we stand right now? And sure, why not? Who do you think is going to get bumped? Any surprises? Let me know down in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube, and I will see you in the next video.